Let's talk movies. Raise your hand for Marvel. Yeah? No? Okay, what about scary movies? Who likes scary movies? Chase? Disney movies? Any Disney fans? Jake? So if you're anything like Chase or Jake or me, then it's like, I like what I like. I love movies. It's like, just give me a movie, I'm gonna watch it. That's not true. Chase isn't that way. Now let's talk movie trailers. I know some of you love watching movie trailers. I do too. My favorite is action. I love watching action movies where it all of a sudden it just cuts to black and it's silent. And then boom, like all of a sudden it's just action. It's crazy. You hear this bass line. It's going do, do, do. They use the same one in every single action trailer movie for some reason. Okay, maybe you don't actually watch them, but you know what I'm talking about. All of this great stuff made like taken straight from the movie to make you like pumped to watch it. Now, whether I have any intention or not of watching that movie, I'm just super pumped just to watch the trailer. Like I love seeing a preview because it just leaves me wondering. And here's what I know for a fact. There's always more to the story than what I see in the trailer. You see, it wouldn't make sense for them to cover the entire movie in the trailer, right? Like, they should not put the entire story, the whole story, in a 2-minute preview. But I bet, I'm sure you've also had this experience where you watch this trailer, it gets you excited to watch the movie, and then you watch the movie, and then it's horrible. Right? Like it's garbage. It's trash. They get you thinking it's going to be like the greatest movie, the funniest movie, the most romantic movie. And then when you watch it, you're like, are you serious? I wasted my time watching this? This is horrible. Like you're thinking they literally showed the best parts of the movie in the trailer. And then you went to the movie and then the rest, like there was more to the story. It was just garbage. For the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about things that are really similar to movie trailers. Like we're talking about parts of life that we all have an idea about. Parts of life you see in culture almost everywhere, and there's often more to the story than what we see in the previews, whether it be for good or for bad. We all kind of know something, but there's way more to the story. And so we're going to start out by talking about sex. What is something that you saw a preview for that when you experienced it, it didn't match what you saw in the preview? Okay, I get it. Talking about sex in church can be a little weird. But when you think about it, think about the fact that it's talked about literally everywhere else. Singers sing about it. Rappers rap about it. Netflix shows don't try to hide it. It's everywhere on TikTok. Magazines at the grocery store talk about sex on the cover. Movies use it as a selling point. It's taught in school. It's joked about with your friends. Some of you probably wish that your parents would stop trying to have that conversation with you. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how awkward is it to talk about sex in church? And how much does it get talked about by the people around you? Some of you may be thinking right now, I already know what he's going to say. Even if you haven't been around church very much, you've probably been around church people. You've been around them enough to have an idea that God cares a lot about your sex life. In fact, maybe you feel like God hates sex and like that's the whole story. Or that God's mad about sex. That's the whole story. Or that God only cares about virginity. Like, end of story. And if that's true, it brings up more questions like, is it bad that I'm thinking about it? Or is it bad if I want to do it? Can I do everything but actual sex? I know people who've had sex and none of them died, so is it really that dangerous? Is it really that big of a deal? I've had sex. So does that mean I'm doomed forever? What if it wasn't my choice? What if it was someone else who made that choice for me? What does God think about that? What am I supposed to do now? I can't even get a guy or a girl to even be interested in me. So like sex is way off my radar. Like, can we just skip church for the next couple of weeks? I get that this is a loaded topic. I do. And sometimes it can feel like God only cares about one thing or one act or one mistake. But as we get started, I want you to know that isn't an accurate picture. The truth is, when it comes to God's plan for sex, there's more to the story. Why do you think we should or should not talk about sex at church? What do most people think God thinks about sex? Here's what's amazing. So we can actually find guidance for our very real questions today by looking at the wisdom of those who lived thousands of years ago. In fact, back then, they were asking very similar questions to the ones we're asking today. We're going to look at a letter the Apostle Paul wrote to the churches in Corinth. Because of where it was located, people were often passing through Corinth on their way to make some money somewhere else. Corinth was known as a place to stop and to party and to misbehave before moving on to their next town or wherever it is they're going. And even though these people lived 2,000 years ago, they don't sound all that ancient. Some of the people living in Corinth also had questions about what it meant to follow Jesus. And so, Paul writes this letter that covers all sorts of topics. But he had a lot to say about the topic of sex. And it's the way he starts this portion of his letter that I want us to think about today, okay? Check it out. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12. Paul writes, "I have the right to do anything." Wow. That's actually where he starts, I promise. He's actually quoting a common phrase that the Corinthians used to say in their culture at that time. It was like an ancient equivalent of like, I do what I want. And so Paul begins with this idea in mind: I have the right to do anything, absolutely anything. But look at what he says next. He says in verse 12, it continues on. He says, "I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything." Read 1 Corinthians 6, verse 12. What do you think Paul meant when he said, "I have the right to do anything, but not everything is beneficial"? Paul speaks right into the Corinthian culture, and honestly into our culture today, and basically says, look, I know it's popular to do whatever it is that you feel like doing, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. In a particularly sexual culture, Paul reminds the Corinthians that just because you can do something doesn't mean it's the best thing for you to do. And the same thing is true about sex today. Some of our lives would be so much easier, so much less complicated, and so much less stressful if we just stopped asking, can I do this without getting in trouble? Or can I do this without getting caught? Instead, what if we started asking, is this good for me? Is this good for me? Or is this the best thing for my life? Is this the best thing in my life? In fact, learning to think about what's best over what's simply normal is part of becoming a mature person. What is something you could do but doesn't benefit you or isn't good for your future? But wait, there's more to the story. Whether you're sexually active or you're thinking about being sexually active or you're consuming sexual content on a screen, there's almost always another person involved. So you and I can't just think about ourselves when it comes to this topic. Yes, we should ask, is this best for me? But we may be able to talk ourselves into doing something we think is right for us, even though it may be harmful for someone else. If we really want to get this right, and we do, we should go even further. Instead of asking, is this best for me? We should be asking, is this best for we? Is this best for me and the other person? This way of thinking isn't optional for those who want to follow Jesus. In fact, when asked what's most important, this was the answer that Jesus gave. He said, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, something might feel good in the moment, but it's not good for your future or for the future of the other person involved. If something is fine for you, but you don't know or can't know if it's harming another person, it crosses the line. You see, Jesus was so clear about what God is like. How you treat people and how they treat you is a big deal to him. He doesn't hate sex, and he doesn't want to keep you from sex. He wants you to become the kind of person who loves him and looks out for other people's best interests because of him. And here's what's crazy. Your dating life and your relationships will be better because of it. And how do I know? Because it's what everybody wants. We all want to be in the kind of relationship where each person looks out for the other person's best interests. We all want mutual love and respect with someone we can trust to have our back. We all want the kinds of friends and boyfriends and girlfriends who will look out for our future, even if we're not doing the best job of looking out for ourselves. And this is what we set ourselves up for when we follow the instructions and wisdom of Paul. Wisdom that is in alignment with the way of life Jesus says is best. But wanting to live this and actually living this are two different things. I realize that there are all kinds of feelings and desires that factor in. In fact, some of you may have acted upon those desires and feelings in the past. And maybe some of you wish you could have made that choice for yourself, but someone else acted on their impulses and you were a victim of it. And I'm sorry. I'm like really sorry if that is your case. Look, it's not your fault. But no matter what your experience is, I want you to know no one's past actions, yours or someone else's, have to determine your next actions. And here's why. As followers of Jesus, we can and we should become people of sexual integrity. I get that sexual integrity isn't a common term. And what that means is someone who's trustworthy, someone who's honest, someone who looks out for other people. They're the kind of person whose beliefs and words line up with their actions. And just like you can be a person of integrity in your academics, a person of integrity in your friendships, you can also be a person of integrity in your sex life. No matter your past experiences. Sexual integrity is more than just saving sex until marriage or feeling guilty for not waiting. Sexual integrity is choosing to honor God and others in how you think about, how you treat, and how you value people that you date. So how do you become a person of sexual integrity? Integrity is about the person you want to be. You can always choose to live with sexual integrity starting now. Nothing you've done and nothing that's been done to you can take that away. How would you define the word integrity? What do you think it means to live with sexual integrity? Now, you may be thinking, sexual integrity sounds nice, but can you just tell me where the line is? What's okay and what's not okay? There's no shortage of people who are willing to tell you what they think or decide this for you. But I want you to think for yourself. I want you to ask questions. I want you to wrestle with what's true. Listen to older, wiser people and then decide for yourself. Not just a decision about what you will and what you won't do moving forward, but a decision about the kind of person that you want to be. Here are a few steps that I believe you can take. First off, talk to God about who you really want to be. Invite him into the story of your life, your whole story. And that includes your sex life. You may have never done that before, but just know that he cares. And it might seem awkward at first, but he loves you and wants to show you how to experience life the way that he designed it and intended it. And I believe that when you talk, he listens. And I believe that when you listen, he'll lead you to what you should do and what's best. Even if you're new to this whole church thing or exploring faith, try this. What do you have to lose? If he really does lead you to what's best for your sex life, isn't that what you really want anyways? And number 2, talk to someone about how you plan to become that person. Bring it up with like your community group leader, a trusted adult who's going to listen and lead you in the right direction. And listen, I get that this sounds weird, but trust me, you're not going to freak them out. In fact, they're probably going to be proud of you for thinking about this and wanting to move forward in becoming a person of sexual integrity. And if you feel like skipping this step because you have to hide the choices you're making, well, that's not really integrity. Integrity is rarely something you feel the need to hide. So the more you openly talk about what you're feeling, what you're struggling with, and how you plan to become the person you really want to be, the more you'll stay focused on becoming a person of integrity in all areas of your life. I get that this is complicated, and it's something that you don't really want to talk about with just anybody. And that's why we have community groups. We want every one of you to have a group of people that you can figure out life with, right? And you can be honest and open and transparent. You can be vulnerable. And when it comes to conversations of your personal life, like these are kept private in your community group. And we want you to have a leader you trust that you can talk to about anything. Your community group leader is that kind of person. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about it in front of your group, like it's okay. Just tell your community group leader, hey, can we have a one-on-one? Can we go grab lunch? And talk to him one-on-one in private. They're totally up for that, I promise. Imagine if accepting this invitation led you to a life that's better than what you can imagine right now. If you chose this way of life, you might just find that when it comes to God's plan for sex, there really is more to the story. Hey, thanks so much for hanging in there. I know that this is a topic that is hard to talk about. But like I said earlier, it's talked about everywhere else. So why not talk about it at church and we can learn about God's design for sex? And so I want to encourage you in your community group to pray for one another, celebrate the good, and lift the things that are difficult up to God, because we worship a mighty God who can do incredible things. And so we want to lift one another up in prayer. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll see you next week.